On the 1st of May in 1985, a Serbian man named George Martinovic, well, just called George, was admitted into a local hospital due to a rectal injury. After being examined by the local horrified doctor, it was clear what exactly his injury was, and it was of, yes, the rectal type. A glass bottle, which has been inserted up his, rear end, has shattered. When questioned about it, he blamed it on two Albanian tourists and claimed that while he was working on his farm, the two guys came over and, generally speaking, tortured him and forced him to do it. Wait, what? Let's take a look at some more context. George was a man living in what is now the territory of Kosovo in the municipality of Gilan, which was primarily Muslim, where a large part of the population was Albanian. As a native Serb, he, combined with what has supposedly happened to him, would have served as a perfect martyr of sorts for the Yugoslavian government. It is important to understand that up until that point, nationalism in the country was starting to brew after years of republics with people bitter towards each other or being housed under one roof. Another important observation is that by 1985, especially after the 81 Kosovo independence protests, where thousands of students demonstrated for it to become a Yugoslavian republic rather than a Serbian province, the Communist League was shifting towards anti-Albanian nationalism, having had blamed the protests on nationalism of Albanians. Let's also consider this. Almost every Serb knew the horrors of impalement, with it being a part of their history. The Ottoman Empire, who ruled Serbia up until 1833, has used it as a form of torturous execution. Also, only around 40 years earlier, Serbs were being slaughtered in concentration camps during World War II, which only added fuel to the growing racial tension fire. Now think about it. A lone Serb in a primarily Albanian neighborhood, mass execution of his people a few decades earlier, the man getting a bottle shoved into him, supposedly by two Muslims, the same way they had excruciatingly done it as a part of Serbian history. George Martinovic was the perfect catalyst to advance the Yugoslav government's nationalistic plans. Now that the context is out of the way, we can get back to the story. After the local doctors examined him, he was interrogated by Yugoslavian army officials, where George admitted that what has happened was not done to him by Albanians, but rather due to his own attempt at self-pleasuring. However, later he came out saying that the two Albanians did do it. Note that he was bribed with his children being employed in exchange for the confession. After being examined by 6 doctors in a military hospital, each from a Yugoslavian republic, they had concluded that the way the bottle was inserted was forceful and sudden enough for it to have been nearly impossible for George to do it himself. However, a physician in the Pristina medical facility argued that his injuries were self-inflicted by using something like a stick to stabilize the bottle and then using his body weight to do the rest. Even still, a new commission hired by the judge of the now active case concluded that either of the two theories may have taken place. By this point, with so many conflicting opinions, the Yugo News started reporting on the case, and they were heavily biased towards George. Many reported what he told them, without stating that it is his own recollection of events. Up until then, nationalism was not something that was to be discussed by these outlets, and though it was obvious where they were leaning, they did not fully take the Serbian side. However, this incident was the one that opened the floodgates, so to speak. News outlets such as Večernje Novosti, Duga, and most notably Politika treated the whole thing as a nationalistic Albanian attack on an innocent Serbian national, sort of like a metaphor for the sentiment that Albanian people as a whole were supposedly feeling towards Serbians, according to the narrative they're trying to push. Okay, that was a lot to take in. In short, thanks to manipulative major news outlets, the incident started to look like a nationalistic attack on a Serb by two Albanians who shoved the bottle up him, though this confession was arguably retrieved from George by an army colonel who promised his children employment in exchange for his admittance. The aftermath of the case of Martinovic is varied, depending on who you ask about it. For George himself, a writer named Dobrica Ćosić helped him hire a lawyer and, in a twist of fate, sued the government for making him cough up a confession. In Yugoslavia as a whole, it just fueled anti-Albanian nationalism and served as the catalyst that the government was hoping for. Side note, one Jovan Raskovic said that Muslims are fixated in the anal phase of their psychological development, which, though racist and not too important, I just thought it was a really funny thing to say. As for Yugo-Albanians, they got the short end of the stick, with all the hatred being concentrated towards them. The majority of them shared the opinion that Martinovic did it himself and was forced to blame it on two Albanians. So think about what can happen if you start shoving a breakable bottle into yourself for pleasure purposes, after which you blame it on two people from a targeted racial group and sell it to the most eager propaganda spreading news outlets.